Hospitals are going after patients with unpaid bills by sending police to their homes, suing them, garnishing their wages, even threatening them with jail time. Why is this happening? Because healthcare in America, even for workers with private health insurance provided by their employers, is not covering enough, and they're left with bills that they simply can't afford. This is one of those sign of the times story that we can't help to want to bring to your attention. A trend that's happening in America. News with Rick Sanchez. Special correspondent Michelle Greenstein has been all over this and shares with us now the details she's learned. What do you got?
So as just one example of the phenomenon of hospitals suing patients for their medical bills, we have right here in Southwest Virginia, pretty close by, a hospital named Ballad Health. They're suing patients for these unpaid medical bills. Now, in 2018, Ballad filed over 6,700 medical debt lawsuits against its patients, and the New York Times says that that number is going up every year. And that's just one example of these hospitals suing these patients. They say, hey, we just want to stay afloat. We don't want to close. So some of these hospitals are choosing to go to the court to get these debt collections.
Why can't these patients, so many of them, suddenly not be able to afford their hospital bills?
Right. Not everyone can pay their bills. In fact, 1 in 4 U.S. citizens skipped medical treatments that they needed because of their costs. The U.S. U.S. citizens have even borrowed about $88 billion just in the last year to pay for their own health care costs. And this is due to a number of things. But one of those things is that deductibles, as you very well know, are on the rise, the amount that you have to pay before your insurance kicks in, right? If you look at 2006, about half of U.S. citizens had to pay a deductible for their health insurance. Now that number is 82% of people who get their health insurance through work. And that average of a deductible is tripling about every year. And of course, it's these low-wage workers who are more likely to be offered these high deductible insurance prices. And also we have things like price gouging, right, which makes a lot of medicines out of reach for people.
So the employer, just so we understand, for those of you, the employer in the United States essentially gets a premium from the insurance company. Say it's going to cost you so much to insure Michelle or Rick, right? And they have to either decide they're going to eat that and pay the $100,000, or say to the employee, to Michelle, hey, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to pay more for your deductible.
And that's for people who are insured, right? But millions of Americans also don't have insurance, right? We had Obamacare, which did improve access to health care for some people, but it did little to curb industry profits. We still had 28 million Americans uninsured under Obamacare. And this is due to a number of things. I mean, look, we have people who can't afford their insurance. We have people who do have insurance, but things like copays and deductibles make that insurance
and that's where the math comes in. If you make, let's suppose there's people out there who only make minimum wage. People who make $13, $14, $15 an hour. If they get hit with a $10,000 bill because of MRIs and surgery, they're not going to be able to pay that?
I'm glad you brought up wages, because the truth of the matter is that wages are not rising in the U.S. And most people, the bottom 99% of people, get their money from wages. So let's take a look at the last 18 years. The people who did best in terms of a wage increase are those who had graduate training, and their wages went up 0.6%. That's not very much. Economists consider that within the margin of error. That's stagnant wages. Now, people with some college education saw their wages grow 0%, not at all, not a bit more than their wages were in the year 2000. And everyone else, people with some high school education, people with high school but no college, and people with no high school, fell somewhere in between 0% and 0.6%. On top of that, we have 78% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. So the average Joe may not choose to settle a medical debt. They may instead choose to feed their children.
And many people watching this would probably argue that what you have just explained is a good case for Medicare for all.
For a single-payer style healthcare system.
A story to be covered on another day, but we're glad you brought us the information.